Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and broadcast. Looks like we're actually having an error on LinkedIn today, David. I'm getting an error that we are live on Facebook and YouTube, but LinkedIn is not working. So I'll look into that as we get started.
Okay. That's a shame. All right.
Yeah, that is a shame. We love our, LinkedIn audience there. So if anybody is watching, just head on over to YouTube and I'll go ahead and plug the link in the comments as we get started here too. But again, sorry to hear that LinkedIn is not broadcasting from StreamYard right now, but we do have a really awesome and esteemed guest. So let's just bring him right on and get this conversation started. But please welcome Matt Prohaska, founder and CEO of Prohaska Consulting. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Jesse. Hey, David. Great to be with you guys. And the irony, we're talking identity attribution and measurement, and LinkedIn has a problem. It's got to be a coincidence.
It's up now.
Oh, really? See, look at that. We shamed them.
It just took a human.
Yeah. They wake up in San Fran. They're ready to go. Very nice.
They fixed it in real time for us. I like it. All right. Look, Matt, it's awesome to have you here. Super appreciate you joining us live. We're excited about this conversation, but for our listeners and viewers who don't know you, maybe, I don't know. I think pretty much everybody in our space knows you, but
no, we got work to do. We got work to do. Rich all the time.
So why don't you give us a little bit of your background? I think that's super helpful. People always like to hear where you came from and what led you to create Prohaska Consulting, and obviously a little bit about what you guys are doing. Be awesome.
Sure. So since we've already taken a swipe at LinkedIn, let's promote them. And obviously LinkedIn, of course, for you to check out. The Cliff Notes is I've been privileged to be in the business 32 years since coming right out of school. Wanted to be in this thing called interactive TV in 1992 before the first browser. Was lucky to be young enough, cheap enough, and risky enough to be allowed to start the digital media practice at BBDO, an Omnicom agency, in 1994 before the first browser came around. And so have been fortunate to be early days at quite a few either startups or moments in our industry. Remembering back when I was writing POVs to try to scrounge up $25,000 test budgets because I thought two of our clients at BBDO might have a stake in this internet thing called FedEx and Visa. And I remember just getting crushed saying, there's no way someone's going to put a credit card on the internet. Are you insane? So I hear e-commerce is doing okay now. So I've been lucky to see and part of our theme in our company's raison d'etre and value is around pattern recognition, because we've been lucky to be around enough now, almost 10 years after I had the privilege of working at another great brand and starting the programmatic practice and data-driven practice at the New York Times in 2013. We've been privileged to help now more than 600 clients around the world across the ecosystem in a lot of the same areas that we're talking about today.
Very cool.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So, and speaking of that, what we need to talk about today, I mean, some of the topics that we've sort of lined up, identity being the first. I mean, everybody's talking about identity and how it ties into sort of the attribution, and we'll talk a little bit about attribution too, but how it ties into that, and as well as the addressability issue that a lot of companies are dealing with today. And so, we saw in the news today about, MediaMath filing for bankruptcy. We know that there's a lot of other companies in the space that are struggling. A lot of it has to do with identity and addressability and the effects of that, the lack of ad performance because of that. So let's talk a little bit about it. I'd love to get sort of your take where we stand there and what's going on.
Yeah, the home office bar is 3 feet from me, so we should all pour one out to our friends at MediaMath today with that very unfortunate news after a great run with a lot of great people who sadly are losing their jobs through no fault of their own, just trying to do the right thing. But zooming out, it's very symbolic of where we are as an industry when the programmatic ecosystem was originally built by great companies like MediaMath. My first deal when I was at AOL in the late aughts. I was fortunate to be in a place where we cut our first programmatic deal at AOL in 2008 with MediaMath 15 years ago. And I remember it took 9 months to get the deal done, 3 with MediaMath and 6 internally, because the executive team at advertising.com wanted to throw me out a window because they knew that this programmatic thing was going to disrupt the best ad network that was ever built by brilliant people in Baltimore and elsewhere. So this concept of programmatic buying, creating so-called efficiencies by basically replacing ad networks and having open auction just handle unsold inventory was a good initial value. But we certainly, as an industry collectively, got way too over our skis, doing nothing but cookie phishing and retargeting bombing to try to steal credit in ad servers to justify more spend. That fortunately is going by the wayside already, thanks to Apple and other browsers. And finally, thanks to our friends Joey and Victor at Google, starting finally in Q1 of this year. So yeah, we'll be in a much better place as an industry. But MediaMath's ultimate bankruptcy and extinction coming is representative of, unfortunately, you know, they had some attempts with their source product. We, full transparency, tried to help a couple of times, but you know, they made some moves, and you know, it's always you know, history is very easy to kind of make prognostications and bland assumptions around why certain things happen. But every one of our services helps people with either tech targets or talent. And we always say the tech and the targets are relatively easy to set up. It's us, darn human beings, that always either get in the way or create the best opportunity and where folks succeed. And so, yeah, Lara, our friend at Insider, did a great expose on MediaMath a few months ago. If you hadn't read that, it's fantastic. We were fortunate to give her some background on that, and the roster of all-stars that have gone through that place over more than a decade. It's a tribute to them. It's a tribute to what was originally built, but it's certainly a cautionary tale around hubris and around trying to get more of a win than really might be a reality for what was actually built, and you know, where they ended up really being over the last few years, which was kind of barely top of the second tier in the DSP space.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we talked a little bit about this prior to the show. Let's talk about it. What are your thoughts about, like, what do other companies in the space need to be doing in order to make sure they don't end up with the same fate?
Yeah, so have an open mind, and like any change in any industry, test and learn as early as possible. Quick free plug, as a resource on our website, ProhaskaConsulting.com, you'll see we've created 5 different versions now. Version 5.0 is live now. Version 5.5 is coming over the summer around what's called an identity partner list. More than 100 companies that have either a deterministic, probabilistic, and or contextual solution regionally or globally. And so that's a free service. There's another one we do for attribution measurement, but it's to frankly educate the market and show folks that not just the loudest marketers in the trades who spend the most money at conferences are the only ones you should work with, because it's going to take a combination, or we've used a cocktail analogy for several years. You got to mix you know, several elements to be able to stitch back scale together in a post-cookie world. It's going to be much better for the consumer, much better in a privacy-first way, as well, regulation-wise. But it's work, and it's not as easy as the easy button of open auction and just cookie phishing and just carpet bombing folks. So, you know, it's an important step, and you know, we've broken out different publishers and brands kind of into quartiles in terms of how advanced or how much they're being dragged into this. So, you know, testing with multiple partners and understanding the differences, not just on methodology, but scale, is huge for anyone on the buy side or sell side today.
I think that's a great point. I mean, we're always telling that to our clients: test and learn, right? I mean, it's so important because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there, right? And so
in ad tech, I don't know what you're talking about. Just the last 28 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Every single company out in the space can't be the best, right? I mean, everyone says that they're the best, but everyone can't be the best. And so there's a lot of smoke and mirrors there. We encourage our clients to test. Like, here you go. Like, we'll give you an audience. We'll give you, give us an audience. We'll process it and match identities for you, whatever you need to do, and then run a campaign on it and A/B test it. Test it against what you're doing today, because we have that level of confidence in what we're doing to show that it'll work over what you might be working with today. So that's something we always make sure that our clients are open to doing, and that they're aware of the importance in doing that. Because just because one company says, hey, we're the best identity solution, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on out there.
And fortunately, again, there's pattern recognition around this behavior when it came to first SSPs and DSPs 15 years ago. The folks that didn't want to test and learn and understand that there's more value in diving in the pool than just folding your arms and pissing on this programmatic thing. I mean, my old boss was the guy who literally came up with the phrase "race to the bottom," because there was fear and anger, which is a huge motivation for a lot of understandable, very smart, successful executives over the years. But I mean, the folks that didn't get up to speed understanding the difference between open and private in SSPs, and with DSPs on the buy side, and with DMPs first and then CDPs. I mean, it's the same thing. The more resources and the culture, most importantly, that you can have to be able to A/B, AC, CD test and go from there. Identity and attribution measurement are, at least philosophically, you're right, David, the exact same thing.
Yeah, and I think we're moving into sort of this direction where everybody is beginning to understand this, because it's almost like anything else. If you look back in history, like in the digital space, like scale comes first, right? And everybody wants scale, whether it had to do with, you go way back and it was just banner advertising or pop-ups or pay-per-click or programmatic. It was always scale that came first. And then what happens? Everyone realizes scale doesn't prove, performance and attribution. So then what happens? Then they start concentrating on quality, and they have to say, okay, well, what can we do? And what do we need to do to get performance and quality out of it?
Yeah.
So that's where we are right now. It's like a roller coaster with every, you get that scale, and then you realize scale isn't enough, and you got to kind of fix that problem and deal with performance.
Well, just to build on that, I mean, you also see it's a change, fortunately, in what KPIs are used, right? Because again, most agencies and then independent trading desks back in the day pitched programmatic buying as a way for efficiency. And efficiency, as we've said in our training for 11 years, that usually translates to cheap CPM. And so when you have brands that hold global pitches where CPM is one of the only KPIs, and promises are made in rooms way higher in the building than the people with the hands on keyboard getting it done, and then things get passed down like, no, you need to be at $1.50 on this. What? Okay, I mean, it's the same thing Reckitt Benckiser tried to pull in digital video when they went to market, saying we have all the money on the planet for a $2 video streaming ad. Well, guess what? Shenanigans took place, and Tremor got caught appropriately trying to jam in-stream into an in-banner, and incentives get warped. And so we've, again, seen this not just in our industry, but many others, that if the rules of the game are set up stupidly, like in attribution and measurement with last click, last touch, because that's easy to understand, well, guess what? It's going to warp people. And then there's a technical term we created that tends to transpire. It's called shenanigans. Tend to happen. Yeah.
Shenanigans. That's a great transition. You brought up attribution and measurement, and I love what you guys are saying about testing and learning. In fact, this whole Deconstructing Data podcast was a bunch of testing and learning in the works, and here we are, 58 episodes later. But on that note, you brought up attribution and measurement, so let's dig into it. Could you kick us off? What's top of mind for you right now with attribution and measurement, Matt?
Yeah, well, it's three different parallel paths, or as we've said and written about, kind of worlds colliding wonderfully, and finally enough people starting to realize we need to change the way we keep score in this industry. We've had an attribution measurement practice in theory 5 years. Didn't get it off the shelf and formally roll it out until really like 18 months ago, because a lot of people for several years, as we say, give good panel. They say nice things on great shows like this, and then behavior doesn't change. But to use a very old media guy reference, you guys remember the great 1980 movie, The Blues Brothers, right? I know, Jesse was probably before your time, because you're like,
No, I remember it.
All right, very good.
But it wasn't live. Couple years later.
That's fair. Very nice. So to quote Elwood Blues, we've been on a mission from God to get rid of two things as soon as possible. One is last click, last touch as the only form of measurement in so-called digital advertising. And the other is demo and panel used exclusively for all video and audio. As we say, that's not exactly a Q2 thing to accomplish, because in last click, last touch, you're talking about changing 27 years of habit with a lot of people who have made a lot of money keeping score in a very overly simplistic, very unfair and inaccurate method. And in demo and panel, you're only talking about 75 years of habit and history. But as you guys know, there is finally wonderful momentum in each of those areas. The third, by the way, that's even more down the road, is around sports marketing and measurement. That's going to take a lot longer, because sports overall is doing so well. It's hard, and there's so much emotion involved in that to justify the premiums that the rights fees and the sponsorships and everything else carries, that it's hard to teach executives who are doing really, really well that they can actually do better if they just personalize things and measure things better. But we've done some good work with MasterCard and a little bit with PepsiCo and some other good agencies trying to help them identify how to measure better, even in those multi-million-dollar global engagements. We're about to do the same for a global airline coming up next quarter. So those are the three areas around attribution measurement where, again, keeping score is important. And not to get too sandboxy on a Friday afternoon here live, but identity and attribution and measurement are about 40% of our business, for what it's worth, and should be for the next several years. And they go hand in hand. I mean, they happen to be the two things, not by coincidence, that Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon have in spades, and thousands of publishers and brands just don't have as much. There's a reason why those four companies are doing really, really well and have built their gardens really, really high, because they have those two things. I mean, if you keep track of score on last click, last touch, well, guess what? If you're a search engine with 92% of global share, or you're a massive social network, or you're a massive e-commerce service, or you're a huge in-app ecosystem, guess who's going to win most of the time? Those four companies.
For sure.
So-called traditional publishers, like my alma mater at the Times, and like our clients at BBC and NPR and News Corp and a lot of others in between, are just, they're fighting a fight with at least one arm tied behind their back. And so, kind of showing a truer way of keeping score and showing impact is what we aim to do.
Yeah, that's super important. It's the problem that we've seen over and over again on the past, especially the past few years, and it's getting worse, with the walled gardens, like you said. And so for those publishers that are not a walled garden, or their walls are not as high, that attribution model is really, really difficult.
But the good news is, we've said this for a while. We were privileged to be brought on by IAB to help them launch Project ReArc, if you remember that from a few years ago, and kind of looking to set the new architecture and standards for identity in general. And in the part of the motivation and incentive, what we're trying to do, and again, it's swimming upstream still quite a bit, is that there are not a lot of commercial incentives for companies to be open. it's very easy to look at those 4 companies and, well, gee, Apple just hit 3 trillion. I know some of that has to do with hardware, obviously, but gee, being closed and arms folded, and you can only use our stuff and you can't take it elsewhere. That seems to be paying off because the market hasn't penalized those companies for that. So, well, it's because when they all grade their own homework, and a CMO and an agency can go and show a chart that always goes up and to the right. As we say all the time, it's understandable human nature most of the time, where it's not like every Tuesday status meeting with the media director and her client, or the CMO and her boss going over status. You're saying, that dashboard I've shown you for 10 years with us kicking butt, putting money in 3 companies, probably half that's bullshit. During a pandemic or in these tough economic times, right? That takes trust. That takes a collective culture, really. And not everyone wakes up wanting to probably admit that, right? And so that's why it's hard to get folks to be, frankly, courageous enough and smart enough and intelligent enough to have the buy-in internally and with clients to be able to say, no, this is actually kind of BS. And we're all human beings. We know how many ads we see in at least 10 different media around the world. You mean to tell me because I type something in a keyword, they get all the credit when I'm already down the funnel thanks to 15 other companies? Really?
Yeah.
How about just spread it out a little bit, guys, right?
Yeah. Or maybe they heard about it on a podcast or a broadcast and then they go search for it.
but because your distribution partners don't let you tag these to be able to then go back on a look back on a view through or a click through or whatever. Yeah. Tougher.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Of the platforms we're on. But again, that's the world we're in today. But where, fortunately in commerce media, which is our second biggest category in the last 18 months of helping folks, we've started to get some buy-in and understanding that, there are more people that want to be open on the buy side. Obviously, you will get friends, you will get money. Amazon is one actually that has some great new talent in the last 18 months that have joined that come from the open world. And so, they're probably, they're definitely the closest of the big 3 to, kind of have a little, trim some of the hedges in the garden a little bit because of all their different businesses and because they know there could be even a larger pie to catch the 2 in front of them if they were to not be Google and Facebook.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of narrative, right? So if one of these big tech companies takes the stance that we're going to help, publishers in general be able to, manage attribution sort of for them, that becomes really interesting then, right? Because then sort of they puts them in the place of being able to control all that narrative. But at the same time makes it so that, that sort of problem that, we're talking about, the attribution problem, sort of goes away. And it goes away thanks to that big tech player that takes that position. So
yeah, and they understand because they've had kind of the audience extension, if you will, or they've understood the power of their data and their audience doing things off platform and outside of just shopping, that there's a larger world out there, believe it or not, outside of Amazon O&O. So, again, I don't want to give them too much credit there. They're kind of a hybrid, but they of course have quite a few assets and some intel and a lot of people that came from the other 2 companies that are pulling some of the same pages from the playbook and then looking to rewrite a couple. So again, it's up to the buyers, frankly, as it usually is, because it's their money to be able to not just talk, but move things and do things differently instead of just following orders and okay.
It's a great point. I love technology just as much as everyone, but at the end of the day, asking your buyer how they heard about you is, still the number one in my opinion.
Yeah, and so just because you can't tag and bag as easily as you can if you're in one of those other 4 companies, right? It just takes, again, a little more common sense and sort of zooming out and but those are hard things to do when today is the last day of the week, month, quarter, and half of the year, right? And
right.
everybody's
And we've got AI too, that's sneaking up. And let's transition into this one if you guys don't mind. Is there anything else either of you wanted to mention on attribution and measurement before we move on?
No, we've got
well,
this is a 3-hour show, right, Jesse?
It could be. I mean, we could probably talk all day.
It would be if we let it happen.
Yeah, the folks in London probably are finishing their third round of pints right now. We should probably make sure we honor the time here. So yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, absolutely. No, if you would kick us off again, like what's top of mind with AI for you right now? I mean, it's top of mind for everyone in the world, with ChatGPT now being front center. Everyone has it at their fingertips. But, what are you seeing from your point of view?
Yeah, well, last week in Cannes, it was certainly way up the Gartner hype cycle. As usual, I'll drop fewer F-bombs than Gary Vaynerchuk, who was, as usual, on brand, almost threatening violence with the number of people that were talking about AI last week on and off his yacht. But for those of you in listening and watching, and you two know that, the programmatic ecosystem has had AI since its beginning. It's called machine learning, which is a subset. So the good news is we've already had at least some practice understanding the balance between humans and machines here. The difference, obviously, as a journalist and one that cares about journalism and news and real reporting and real context and perspective from human beings. As we say, this isn't the Web3 and meta hype from last year in Cannes or last year at South by Southwest, where there were many jump the shark moments. The line I was throwing around last week is, it's not like, and this is much more real. It's not like BuzzFeed laid off 30 editors to replace them with 4 bored apes. I mean, this is obviously a little different here, but it is, a reminder that we all know that it's humans leveraging machines, not getting to, singularity tomorrow or anything like that. And the one, I will say, the one encouraging sign, and again, Cannes is symbolic of that, because even though it's usually folks walking symbolically and literally on opposite sides of the La Croisette, with the media teams usually on one path and creative on the other, it is at least a place where people are reminded that media and creative should probably work a little better together. And where I'm optimistic, and where our company is always optimistic in wanting to help folks not exactly use fear as much to sell or threaten or anything else, but to again embrace and leverage again good human beings, having this as a support to again remove task and effort and cost of things that aren't using the things that we're unique about as human beings, with a brain and a heart and a soul, to be more creative and proactive and strategic. So coming out of Cannes, I mean, we'll fall a little bit into the classic trough of disillusionment that Gartner brilliantly came up with, and we've seen all the time. But again, that's when we learned with our company the last 10 years. Right when you come out of that is usually when we start training. So that's when we started training in attribution measurement last year, and we did it with identity. Fortunately, with the A&A the last 3.5 years now, and going strong. So yeah, there will be actual application. The good news is, again, we as consumers can understand some of the differences. Where we're seeing application most, and where clients are asking us for what it's worth, are on the publisher side, because we're helping them think about just early days still about new KPIs. I mean, traffic numbers and impressions and how publishers keep score editorially and commercially is going to be pretty different when the homepage will be a different experience. The entry point from search and social will be very different. So those machines at publishers primarily, and certainly with brands as well, since every publisher is a brand and every brand's a publisher, as we say, but kind of your traditional digital publishers will need to think about new economics and how to growth hack and kind of maintain and grow audiences.
I think you hit on something there also, is that that we've been talking about constantly on this podcast, is that AI in ad tech is not new. There's this the programmatic world has been there. There's a lot of things going on, especially in sort of those walled gardens. There's been a lot of AI and ML used in, Facebook and Google, Amazon as well. But what's really interesting now is I think that because of ChatGPT, people are more aware of it. They've gotten a chance to play with it with their own.
Oh yeah, everybody's family member knows what this is. I mean, this is legit, right? Like, remember the first time we all had to explain, no, I'm sorry, you keep getting the same stupid ad for the shoes a week after you bought the shoes. Those are just lazy, stupid buyers who aren't tagging properly and segmenting. And we're sorry as an industry. We're trying to clean that up. I mean, this definitely hits home. Easier to talk about around, the July 4th holiday when everybody's tested it around the world, right?
Yeah. So the thing is that everybody's been able to play with it. So now they're aware of it. They're like, oh, what's this AI thing? So now everybody's talking about it. But we know, right, that this has all been working in the background, for quite some time anyway. But I think that going forward, there's still a lot of really interesting things to happen. And, we're seeing, there's companies like, that are building new algorithms and things like that for targeting. We're doing work on our end in identity and in audience creation using machine learning that is able to sort of build audiences based on a lot of, analyzing a heck of a lot of data. And so I think it's going to improve targeting over time. I think that's one of the things that'll be really interesting.
And it'll bring a new wave of planning and strategy into place, because the predictive nature, instead of just kind of taking past data and then looking back and then re-optimizing in real time and all that's fine and great. And we've made wonderful strides in 15 years on that. The ability to use signals much more quickly and from $1, do a better job. Even, of course, editorially as publishers, because we always, the other thing we're kind of on a slow mission on, we've all spent a lot of time with this paid media, but there are these things called earned and owned as well that are kind of important for the CMO and important for the publisher as well. I mean, the thing about the content concept, I remember being with my 7th day at New York Times, the CEO calls me in to ask about what the heck this programmatic thing is. And I realized in 30 seconds, it's like a justify your job kind of, and why did we hire you and what are you doing? And I remember he had one of those old school easels with markers in his office. And I was saying, well, here's the, front page of the business and finance section of the New York Times today. And today we basically bake off pixels, and advertising gets this and editorial gets this and marketing gets this, for 4 weeks for 99 cents. And we'll sell crossword puzzles over here. And, and then there's a bake off or a redesign, or we got a horse trade with department to department. What if we just started with a clean screen every time? And when I come in, it knows my whole history. It knows, my lookalikes and everything else. And it creates the page based on ideally what I've set deterministically, because it knows that it's actually me and not just probably someone like me, probabilistically. But that kind of exciting dynamic, suggestive or proactive personalization is exciting, as long as, once again, we've already seen the danger of when it gets too scary and stupid and following me around. And that's when you get senators and presidents and leaders talking about spyware and talking about surveillance tech, and, not a place we want to continue going as an industry.
Definitely.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, not to transition again, but I know, we got to get to this 4th topic. It's something that we ask all of our guests. And that's, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack?
Well, because we're the independent consultants and we've probably reviewed and optimized tech stacks about 800 times over the years out of the 1,200 engagements that we've had for clients, we don't really queen or king make on this. So for us, personally, with our slightly smaller paid media budget, but proud on earned and owned with Rich and our marketing team, doing a great job. We're right now, to be transparent, we've been a Salesforce shop for a while, but as I predicted, we're kind of breaking it because it's a little limiting. So we'll see. They're we're a little too nimble for their little clunky kind of classic spot. So we'll look at other stuff there with our ABM and our own B2B stuff. We've got, because talent management for us is kind of unique in relationship marketing, because we can work indirectly and or directly with every company or every person in our industry. Knowing all of our different touch points across our different divisions in real time is huge. And being able to report on that and trying to be a self-service organization so we can scale and move quicker and not have to be as manual with asking questions, or, just like get everything out there for everyone to be able to go access and do their thing quicker. In a B2B space, it's a little more challenging, but there are some great data sources, we've helped with, and we're fans of Eric and the Bombora guys that we've been privileged to do a few things with. And, what's exciting is we do a lot of M&A due diligence, fortunately, as well. That's fun. And we're seeing kind of the enterprise moves, sell side and buy side, starting to come together. So instead of, publishers and brands or agencies needing to piece together 12 different point solutions, we're starting to get that kind of good scale through M&A, through building, through just, understand just process efficiency to where, the data can pass and the analytics can then be shared a little bit to just manage things a little better. So what we like is when there's consolidation and aggregation in a good way, not in the classic, we're going to buy 6 companies. I know from experience from AOL where 15 years ago, we bought 6 companies in 18 months and did an awful job on 5.5 of them. So a lot of good learning then that we apply to help companies integrate after the tombstone and celebrations and big fancy checks and headlines are written.
Oh man, I love that. And you're singing tunes to my ears, because Salesforce is, as a marketer, I can completely understand what you're saying. It can be challenging in B2B. It's a little clunky. Sometimes too many bells and whistles than you really need.
Yeah, with Dreamforce coming up in San Fran, they're an easy target to go hit. It's sad that they riffed like the top 5 smart people in the organization who were actually knowing what a CDP was. Amazing. One of them's on our bench right now, and 2 of them have found great jobs elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, it's just the classic, aggregation, multi-industry, trying to put pieces together without, really understanding. But again, it's always about keeping the talent, the tech and the targets, and everything looks good on spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides, right? And grand vision until you integrate and make sure that it's actually additive for clients instead of pain in the arse, right?
And that can really even improve culture. One thing that we bring up on Whiskey Wednesday, which I know I've told you about before, is sales marketing.
I have some of the whiskey ready to go, hopefully. For you're doing it after the 4th, right?
Yeah, you want to come on Whiskey Wednesday? We'll definitely get to that. But
if you're not sick of me already to have me back in 5 days, okay, yeah, I'm there.
What was that?
If you're not tired of me already, and 5 days from now, that isn't way too soon.
Yeah, no, I'm going to send you the link. Would love to book you on Whiskey Wednesday, because you're saying what a lot of people say in B2B sales and marketing, which is your technology can help align your team and help build your culture. And so, it's just really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, again, at AOL, after we acquired these companies, our sales account management team had to log into 14 different systems if you needed to buy an ad across the AOL.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
And I had quite a few, let's say, passionate discussions with different division heads and teams that wanted to stay separated versus an integrated team. And yeah, it's why, culture eats strategy for breakfast ain't a cliche, because it's wrong, right?
I bet everybody's passwords across all those 14 systems were the same too.
We tried. It's not even worth getting into, but yeah, I had a healthy debate with our legal department saying, can we just automatically give everyone the same password set and just move on so we can just, and this is way before wallets and everything else, but it was a little painful to actually, do business. But again, a lot of great learning and a lot of great people that had passion and, most of them trying to do the right thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're getting running out of time, but I wanted to make sure, because you and I talked about this beforehand, or at least we emailed about this, and And I wanted to get your opinion. Is it going to be Musk or Zuckerberg?
Can we root for an MTV celebrity death match? Like just both of them knock the crap out of each other for a while, and
they both go down at the same time.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, there were those video games. I had an Intellivision video game in the early '80s, and in the boxing game, if you hit the same button on each control, you could actually time it, and it would be this double knockout. And it was the greatest thing when you were 9 years old and you didn't realize it was actual violence. But no, I mean, we don't root for physical pain. We root for humility, and those are two guys who certainly could use a dose or 12.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's that Rocky and Apollo Creed scene where they kind of both hit each other at the same time. They both go down at the same time.
Yeah, but, I mean,
and maybe that happens with them, and it's the first hit.
Yeah, that assumes though that most people are rooting for one of them over the other versus just that. Yeah, I mean it's I mean there are so many jokes and they again have enough attention. I think we can move on and hopefully they can fight each other by making their platforms less violent and painful to women and kids. How about that? Let's have that fight.
I vote for that.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
But one more question before we let you go, Matt.
Yeah.
If you could go back when you first came into this industry, what is one thing you would teach yourself? One thing you learned.
I would teach myself to not try to accomplish everything and convince everybody of what I thought was right within 5 minutes. I've been very lucky for 30 years to still be upright and not have too many people hate me. But yeah, I mean, I've been this disruptive guy for a while that sometimes lets impatience get in the way. So yeah, I would probably try to, the classic better with honey than something else. So I would have probably earlier on tried to build consensus instead of just being that guy, which I did a few times in my career. Fortunately, we're paid to do that a little bit at our company now and privileged to have 100 or so others that have at least that mentality. But yeah, it would have been that kind of patience earlier.
Well, that's great, honest feedback. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. No, good stuff. It's a Friday afternoon, for God's sake, right? Pretty busy
Absolutely.
week.
And in closing, Matt, where would you like to tell listeners how they can find you?
Yeah, ProhaskaConsulting.com for sure. Or LinkedIn is always a great place. Matt at ProhaskaConsulting.com. But all contact info's on there. And again, fortunately, we're privileged to have a great team for almost 10 years now, helping a lot of folks just do better. And so, looking forward to seeing online and wherever else we can help you. We have more than 800 people amazingly on our bench that are either looking for new full-time work or side hustles or are all-time freelancers. You guys can imagine the amazing talent that's available right now, most of the time through no fault of their own. So we look to, get folks back out contributing like we know they can as soon as possible.
That's
very
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, this has been great, Matt. We appreciate you being here. This has been a great conversation. I think that it's a great opportunity for our listeners to get to hear you talk about these topics. And I'm going to let Jesse close it out. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. And audience members, we hope you'll check out BeatX's Omni IQ. You can simply go to beatx.com and try it for free. Or if you're watching on video, you can scan our QR code to find it. But when you get there, you can just upload a CSV file of your first-party customer data, and then you get complimentary analytics on your gender, birth year, and household income with no credit card required. So you can just test it out, see what you think. And of course, you're going to want to upgrade to learn more. And then you can build an audience with that, an extended audience. Anything else you want to add on Omni IQ, David?
No, that's a good update. I mean, it's an AI engine as well that will help build audiences based on your first party data. So you want to try to find more people just like your best customers, put it into Omni IQ, and let us build you an audience and get you started on some improved performance.
Absolutely. And we'd love to hear from listeners too. So if you will have any guests in mind that you think we should interview, feel free to reach us at info@bdex.com. Share your qualitative data with us so we can make this better for you. All right. And thank you so much, Matt, again. And Deconstructing Data members, we will see you next week.
Thanks,